Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind. Apologies, leftoids, but the party is over. I know that you were just getting started celebrating the supposed end of democracy as we know it. Trump ripped off the ballot in Colorado. It's over. No more elections. Simply Democrat candidate installments. I know that sounded great in the fascist hellscape that you tend to paint as a supposed utopia. I know the celebration was just getting started, but it seems as though it's already done as reality checks in. Donald Trump wins in court once again as the Michigan Supreme Court has now rejected an appeal to remove Donald Trump from the state ballot. More legal precedent that continues to make look Democrats absolutely horrible. They got egg on their face, as it seems the actions that they've been justifying as lawful are actually a gross abuse of power and desecration of the Constitution. Let me show you guys exactly what I mean by that. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so where do we go for news like this? Well, obviously, if it's good news for Trump that even leftists don't have a choice of reporting, let's turn on CNN and take a look at the copium.
A state Supreme Court in Michigan has just rejected an effort to remove Donald Trump from that state's primary ballot. CNN's Caitlin Polantz has all of the details coming in early today. Caitlin, this ruling comes 8 days after Colorado's Supreme Court ruled that Trump should be removed from the ballot. Tell us about what the Supreme Court in Michigan is saying now.
Well, every state is following their own rules and their own processes for how to have candidates on the ballots. And this is why we're seeing something so different in Michigan today. The highest court in Michigan, 7 justices determining they're not going to get involved. The lower courts in Michigan said that they acknowledged that there were challenges to Trump being on the primary ballot there, and the lower court said, we also are not getting involved. This is not something for us to determine, and they weren't weighing in on the general election either at that time. And so now this case goes to the Michigan Supreme Court. They looked at it and they said, yeah, we're not going to do anything here either. But one of the justices in Michigan did write today in this ruling that Michigan is very different from Colorado. The laws are different around who qualifies for their primary ballots there. And that is one of the reasons why that state is ending up with a different situation about determining whether Donald Trump can be on the ballot because of the constitutional ban on insurrectionists running for office.
Well, Copium was right, huh? Don't you just love the way CNN has to sprinkle a little bit of bias in no matter what the reporting? She presents the initial story that the Michigan Supreme Court has now rejected the attempt to pull Donald Trump off the ballot, but then immediately goes into total Copium mode, claiming, well, it's probably because Michigan has a different way of doing things. The laws are different. That's why they're ending up with a different result than Colorado. Not because Donald Trump didn't engage in insurrection and the 14th Amendment doesn't apply. Thanks, genius senior crime and justice reporter, I'm assuming quasi-legal analyst at CNN. What absolutely idiotic analysis. Let's take a look at the actual details in the decision. The Michigan Supreme Court rejected a request to have former President Donald Trump removed from the ballot in 2024 on allegations that he violated the insurrectionist ban in the U.S. Constitution. The decision stands in stark contrast to the Colorado Supreme Court's recent decision, which removed Trump from the state's primary ballot due to his involvement in the riot that had occurred on January 6th in the Capitol building. Given these contradictory rulings, the anticipated appeals to the U.S. Supreme Court take an even greater significance, particularly as the country gears up for the 2024 primaries. The lawsuit in Michigan, in contrast to the one in Colorado, was dismissed before it even reached trial. A court that heard appeals from the lower courts affirmed the dismissal of the case. According to the judge who initially heard the case from Michigan's Court of Claims, there is no room in state law for election officials to verify the eligibility of candidates for the presidential primary. He went on to say that the courts had no business deciding the case because it posed a political question. The Michigan Supreme Court did not release a vote count, and the order was unsigned. The courts in Michigan, in contrast to their Colorado counterparts, dismissed the case entirely due to procedural issues. They skirted the issue of whether or not Trump participated in the January 6th insurrection. In a Wednesday piece, one of the justices from Michigan explained how their state differs from Colorado. The anti-Trump challengers have identified no analogous provision in the Michigan election law that requires someone seeking the office of President of the United States to attest to their legal qualification to hold office. In other words, there's no state precedence to pull anybody from the ballot, and especially not using the 14th Amendment. If the 14th Amendment applied here, it wouldn't just apply in Colorado, it wouldn't just apply in potentially Michigan or Oregon or wherever else Democrats and anti-Trump rhinos are pushing these frivolous cases. For the 14th Amendment to truly apply to Donald Trump, a couple things would have to be true. There would have to be a law signed by Congress, specifically laying out the crime of insurrection. Then, in a court of law, Trump would have to be found guilty of insurrection. As labeled and as described by Congress, he would have to be charged with that law, at least that's my understanding based on the research that I've done. But of course, as we know, none of that has happened. And the craziest part is, even if the Democrats managed to do all of that, they managed in a court of law to find Donald Trump guilty of insurrection, it still probably wouldn't even apply. And there's more legal precedents which suggests that that's the case. This is coming from an anti-Trump legal analyst who works for CNN, T.Y. Cobb, a former assistant attorney for the District of Maryland. He said, and I quote this specifically, "The real key issue in this case is Trump an officer of the United States in the context in which that term is being used in Article 3 of the 14th Amendment. In 2010, Chief Justice Roberts explained in Free Enterprise that people don't vote for officers of the United States. Article 2, officers of the United States, is commonly understood in the Constitution to refer to appointed officials, and to the extent that the president or the vice president are included as an officer or included within the admonitions of the Constitution, they are typically highlighted, like in the impeachment clause, which specifically says president and vice president. So I think this case will be handled quickly. I think it could be a 9-0 in the Supreme Court for Trump. There's already legal precedence. Article 3 of the 14th Amendment doesn't even apply to elected officials. So hypothetically, again, this is from my understanding and based off a ruling that we saw previously. In other words, it seems as though it isn't a law that's meant to subvert democracy, but rather stop people from being appointed to positions of power, to officer positions, had those individuals engaged in insurrection back in the times of civil war. In other words, it doesn't seem to apply at all. Yet Democrats are pursuing with their abuse of the legal system and their abuse and twisted interpretation of the Constitution. They know they're full of it. The courts are telling them they're full of it. Their own politicians are telling them they're full of it. Their own legal analysts on their favorite networks are telling them it's not going to work, it's unconstitutional, it's going to get shut down in a 9-0 decision, a victory at the Supreme Court for Donald Trump. And so once again, Democrats, I guess, are showing their true colors. This is who they are. They will stop at nothing. Every single Colorado Supreme Court justice who voted yes should be ashamed of themselves, frankly should be ridiculed, to be completely honest, should probably resign from their post. But the people who should most be ashamed of themselves are those who call themselves Democrats while enabling and engaging in all of this awful anti-democratic behavior. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.